Gintama's openings are some of my favorite intros in entertainment, let alone anime. The 21 main openings are packed with foreshadowing, symbolism, great visuals, and amazing music, that to discuss all the openings one by one would take multiple videos. However, there is this one trend that I've noticed, and I'm pretty sure you all have noticed as well, beginning with the Yorozuya driving towards Edo Terminal, and ending when we get a shot of our three protagonists staring intently at the sky. Now, this is in no way an uncommon shot in anime openings, but what I found interesting about it is the importance and symbolism it holds in the context of Gintama specifically. I found it interesting that no matter how unique the opening, no matter how distinct the song or the visuals, we are given some variation of this sequence of shots in nearly every opening with nearly the same setup. I decided I'll try my hand at deciphering what this means, and why we see this in almost every opening. Keep in mind, this is my interpretation and not meant to be taken as some definitive end-all be-all statement on what these OPs mean. The first opening doesn't make it as obvious. We are given the initial shot of the Yorozuya bursting down the road in their usual vehicles, but unlike a lot of future openings, the terminal isn't directly in front of them, instead being to the side with seemingly little importance to the characters. And I find this kinda brilliant because it sort of represents just how small the scope of everything is in the beginning of this series. The Yorozuya do not yet have a goal or a destination in which to face their problems, since they've only just discovered each other, and the trio do not yet have a clear sense of what their mission is yet. And the terminal symbolizes so many of the core issues in the series plot-wise. The terminal finally shows up in the last bit, but with Gintoki glaring at it alone, symbolizing that his newfound alliances are yet to blossom, and he still wallows in the post-Joey War isolation. But with the sudden entrance of Sadaharu, we're being told that this is due to change very soon. In the second opening, we're given a similar opening shot with Gintoki and Shinpachi, but with the terminal in sight, albeit very far and hardly visible. I take this to mean that things are becoming a little bit more clear for our main characters as they become more used to each other and their new lives in each other's company. Yet with the terminal still being so far away, the Yorozuya and their friends have a long way to go, and the world won't be letting them off the hook so easily. In a shot soon after, the Yorozuya are walking away from the terminal, communicating a sort of blissful ignorance that they're still in, with very little idea of what's to come. After that is where we get our first iconic shot of the Yorozuya looking into the sky on a cliffside. In this first shot, they are looking into an empty sky with only clouds and a sunset. This shot is noticeably missing several major features that we usually get in these shots, once again symbolizing how easygoing things are as of now. The sky doesn't yet mean anything to the Yorozuya, but that's soon to change. The next opening bit doesn't start off very special either. We're given a similar shot to the last two, but instead our characters are seemingly interrupted by this sense of curiosity, or possibly even foreboding, even if the music doesn't make it seem so. They all stare intensely at the terminal for a brief moment, foreshadowing the sudden realization of both the main characters and the audience of the real gravity of the situation in Gintama, and how the happy-go-lucky world they seem to live in just might be an illusion. When we return to the cliffside shot, unlike last time, the Yorozuya are accompanied by a plethora of ships which slowly reveal the terminal, as if showing off the significance of the terminal to the plot and the new Japan in the show. Yet in another shot soon after, the Yorozuya are relaxing while looking at the sky, with Kagura and Gintoki returning to sleep and Shinpachi immersing himself in his music. Meaning that despite things becoming more clear gradually, reality has not yet completely set in and the worst is still yet to come. In opening 4, the typical opening shot is happening to a sunset, while they finally seem to be getting closer to the terminal. And in the closing cliffside shot, the Yorozuya are staring directly at the terminal with optimism instead of looking away from it in the opening. I take this to mean that the Yorozuya's understanding of the situation has improved and they are confident in their ability to deal with their problems since their bond has grown stronger. Yet the sunset doesn't seem to be there for nothing. The next opening seems to follow up the previous opening as the sun is now nowhere to be found and the typical drive towards the terminal is a lot more somber, as everyone has an intense look on their face except for Sadaharu. Sadaharu is always happy. But the reason for this darkness and the stern look on most of the Yorozuya's faces is that this is the opening that accompanies the legendary Benny-Zakura arc and Shinsengumi Crisis arc, where everything got real and never looked back. The grave situation Japan was in, the mysterious and malicious Amanto influences were no longer shrouded in mystery, they were real, and enveloped the tone and atmosphere of the show. And although it took them some time to get accustomed, the Yorozuya are ready, judging by the looks in their faces. And in the cliffside shot, despite the gravity of the situation, the main trio remain unfazed by the sudden changes, standing in basically the same place as the opening before, symbolizing their ability to take on adversity. The sixth opening changes the entire mood, starting with Gintoki and Shinpachi driving on a dirt road instead of the typical highway to the terminal we get every single time. And I think that's telling of the detour tone-wise, and the return to status quo we received after the Benny-Zakura and Shinsengumi Crisis arcs, since we went back to the usual comedy episodes after these two intense arcs. The stare at the sky ending instead takes place at night, staring at a full moon, in a nod to two very important characters we will be introduced to soon. The 7th opening is the first to ditch the driving start and instead puts it in the end. And we're also not given the stare at the sky ending shot. This opening solely accompanies comedy arcs, so it's similar to opening 6 in its tone, in a sort of celebration of the end of the Yoshiwara in Flames arc. And there really isn't too much to go on, except for the end, where the Yorozia seem to be on their way back to the terminal after the detour in the last opening, accompanied by Sakura tree leaves, yet instead of a straight path, their progress is for the first time stopped by a turn in the road, and what could be a little example of the sudden return of our daunting issues after the post-Yoshiwara fanfare. That's where opening 8 comes in, with some of the most intense visuals in the series and a great song. But for the sake of our video, it doesn't have a lot for us to talk about. But the crows seem to be a foreshadowing of future characters and future developments who are important to Gintoki's story. Opening 9 also starts without the drive to the terminal, and after the iconic troll face shots, we're given a shot of Gintoki walking away from the terminal in Kabukicho. But instead of the blissful ignorance of opening 2, Gintoki and Co are not facing away from the terminal because of a lack of understanding, because the main issue in the arc this opening accompanies, the Kabuki 4 Devas arc, are inwards, on the ground in Kabukicho. Jirocho, Piriko, Saigo, etc. Despite the threats from space, there's a lot of unfinished business right in their own neighborhood. So out of necessity, our heroes turn away from the terminal to deal with the issues right at home. And in the iconic scooter scene at the end, the Yorozuya stare down the entire district and everyone in it, ready to fight and take on anything. Our next opening of interest is opening 11, which we finally return to the opening highway shot, and the sun is finally rising again for the first time since opening 4. And aside from it accompanying a few really good comedy arcs, it also accompanies the Thorny arc, where our new antagonists Sasaki Saburo and Imai Nobume debut and present a serious roadblock to the Shinsengumi. Yet with these two new intimidating threats, why is it that the sun is still rising hopefully? I believe it's a communication of Isaburo and Nobume's true intents, despite their scary exteriors. Despite appearing to be the enemy, we learn later on that they're not. We learn later on that they're not the evil obstacles we thought they were, but a part of the solution. Which is why, despite their presence in this opening, the sun still shines and rises. Skipping over to opening 13, the opening returns to the dark, with Gintoki covered in shadows, before the light falls upon him. In the next major scene of the opening, instead of driving on the scooter or riding on the back of Sadaharu, our main characters are on foot, but it starts with only Gintoki running by himself in desperation towards a mirage of Shoyo, representing the desperation, anger, and despair he felt after fighting Oboro in the Courtesan of a Nation arc, as well as after the execution of Shoyo after the Joey War. During this arc, it seemed to all be lost for Gintoki. Everything he had worked for seemed to be for nothing, which is why he suddenly doesn't have his scooter in this opening, symbolizing this kind of inability to go forward. Yet just like the darkness covering Gintoki dissipated, Gintoki's desperation quickly turned into hope as his Yorozuya friends run to his side. Much like his friends and allies were quick to help him after being poisoned by Oboro. In the last shot, the Yorozuya once again glare at the sky, yet despite the darkness, the brightness of the moon and the sakura leaves illuminate the night sky, and a nod to the amount of support Gintoki has in even the darkest times of the series. Opening 15 has the Yorozuya back on their usual vehicles, but instead of the open road where they usually are, they're surrounded by trees, before emerging from that forest where everything is once again clear. In a way, representing the reveal of Gintoki escaping his execution and Asaemon regaining sight of her objective and ideals throughout the Reaper arc. The ending shot doesn't feature the sky, but instead the Yorozuya are right in the face of the terminal, seemingly in the middle of town, symbolizing that they and their allies are quickly getting closer to the root of their plights, who all have something to do with this terminal. In opening 17, we're given an explosive payoff, with this hype opening giving us glimpses and reminders of the unforgettable events of the Shogun Assassination arc and Farewell Shinsengumi arc, as many of the characters face their demons head-on. Opening 18 starts with the Yorozuya on top of the terminal, communicating that they are no longer searching for the answers, but are on the offensive, as the trio will leave Earth entirely to confront Utsuro and Kamui on their own turf. The Yorozuya are done being pushed around on Earth and are now going to Rakio to put a stop to the nonsense. Opening 21, the most recent opening accompanying the new Silver Soul arc, returns to Earth. Yet now, there is no longer a path to the terminal, no staring at the sky. There's no more cat and mouse between anyone, and all the players are gathering in the same place for a final confrontation. And the ultimate sign of the end of this chase is the shot of the destroyed tower at the end. And there's my take on the progression of the openings and endings. Let me know what you think, or if you interpreted the openings differently. Thanks for watching, and take care.